Hello and welcome. This is Good Friday of a Holy Week. My guess is different from a Holy Week you've ever had in your life. This particular service tonight is a different kind of service as well. This is a service of shadows. This is the darkest service of the Christian year. It is a reminder that expectations can be dashed, that our best hopes can be dissolved, that our best intentions may turn to the opposite. I want to invite those of you who are watching to participate with us in spirit in this service. I'm actually going to ask you to do something somewhat unusual to somewhat disrupt the space that you were in simple ways. If you have family pictures on your coffee table or close to you, just turn them down. Put them flat so the picture maybe is turned away from you. Maybe even take a moment, and if you've got frame photos close to you on the wall, take them off and put them down next to the floor for this service. So all you see is perhaps a nail to remind you that the picture was there. This is a service in which we are solitary, which are reflective on our individual lives before God. As Holy Week moves forward, as the Passover week went forward for Jesus, Jesus, who was in Jerusalem, left Jerusalem to stay with friends just outside the city. But he planned to come back in Jerusalem for the Passover meal and to share it with his disciples. We'll begin the service with a scripture and also a short homily. From Luke chapter 22, verses 7 through 13. Then came the day of unleavened bread on which the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed. So Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, "Go and prepare the Passover meal for us, that we may eat it." They asked him, "Where do you want us to make preparations for it?" "Listen," he said to them, "when you have entered the city, a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him into the house he enters and say to the owner of the house, 'The teacher asks you, where is the guest room where I may eat the Passover with my disciples?' He will show you a large room upstairs already furnished. Make preparations for us there." So they went. They found everything as he had told them, and they prepared the Passover meal. It is the Passover. The festival of unleavened bread is a time in Jerusalem for memory and remembrance. It's a time to tell the significant stories of the faith once again, to recall and to sing of the promises of God. A time to reconnect with the God of those that have gone before us and the God of today who surrounds us and calls us into a future. Jesus and the disciples are in Jerusalem for the festival of Passover. It's a busy time in the city. Now, unless you made your reservations for a room in which to hold your Passover activities some months ago, you're just out of luck. There may be as many as 100,000 people in the city. The disciples are really probably anxious. Where are we going to be meeting? Did someone call the caterer? Has anybody made arrangements? Which part of town has any availability at this late date? But Jesus was not worried. It seems he's already done prior negotiations. It has all been arranged. Whenever you think you've got Jesus figured out, you're in for a surprise. And so he tells several of the disciples, "Go into the city, look for a man carrying water, and he is going to give you access to a room that will be suitable." It was already arranged, the disciples realized. Jesus had taken care of it behind the scenes, plans already made, deposits paid. So let go of your anxiety. It's going to work out. Because this evening is a time of celebration. This evening is a time to gather as friends, to dine together, to enjoy each other's company, to remember the successes, to plan for the bright future that just seems assured after the procession in Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. This evening provides some space in which we can breathe deep, take a little pride in what our efforts have accomplished. So all the disciples have gathered, the ones who he has called by name and claimed. But this particular evening, it is not going to end well. It is not the quality of the food that will cause the discomfort. It is not the drink. The wait staff will be appropriate and attentive. But something is not right. You know the feeling that comes upon you sometimes just before a storm breaks. The air is different. It smells odd. Sound echoes strangely. Here in the upper room, there is a hollow sense to the space. Jesus is speaking with a different tone. For each of us who know this gospel story by heart, having heard it again and again, we read over the details quickly. We don't really pay attention. But there is one overarching detail over which we do need to linger. Jesus is gathered with his friends in an upper room, and as the meal begins, they're all here. Jesus blesses the food and the drink for each of them, even for the one who will betray him. Even for the one who's going to leave before the meal is done, creating an excuse for an early exit, Jesus feeds his betrayer. Jesus blesses his betrayer. And as we all gather to share in the memory of that meal, Jesus feeds each of us, feeding and blessing his betrayer one more time. Of all the liturgical seasons of the church year, Holy Week is designed to offer space apart for reflection on the betrayal each of us has brought to God, to the God who gives us life. To recall how often we have broken our covenant with God, on how many times we have turned from the path that we began, how often we have sold out our friends or compromised our values for an advantage. We are trudging up the Lenten hill toward the finish line of Easter. And if we're doing this right, we can feel the weight across our shoulders. Because the truth is that all of us at some time have pushed back from the table and we have left the meal early. All of us have betrayed Jesus. There have been famous betrayals in history that have become part of our common conversation. Early during the American Revolution, Benedict Arnold was a renowned patriot general whose exploits on Lake Champlain in the defeat of a British fleet of ships probably saved New England from being overrun. His dramatic leadership in the defeat of a wing of the British force as it invaded Canada at the Battle of Saratoga in 1777, well, his actions allowed an entire British army to be captured, with a victory that persuaded the French to become American allies. Which is why Arnold's subsequent betrayal of George Washington in the Patriot cause when he switched sides burned so fiercely and stunned everyone in command positions across the Continental Army. It's been said by historians that if Arnold had died in 1777, he'd be remembered as a hero and we'd have statues celebrating him in courthouse squares all across modern America. But instead, George Washington was left so hurt and angry by the betrayal, he actually launched a secret mission to attempt to capture Benedict Arnold alive from the heart of New York City. He learned where Arnold was staying. He wanted to try to get folk in there to get him out. and he stressed in secret orders that he wanted Arnold alive, not dead, because he wanted him put on trial and then hanged publicly. The betrayal of someone he thought of as a fellow patriot, a friend, a brother, hurt him deeply. As many of us know, betrayals scar and betrayals burn. In his play of the same name, Shakespeare provides a line for Julius Caesar to utter. "And you too, Brutus?" as he is stabbed by his close friend along with other knife-wielding members of the Roman Senate. Historians are quick to point out that, considering the fact Caesar was stabbed 23 times, he probably didn't have much to say at all, except, "Ah." But no doubt the thought of the betrayal would have been preeminent in his mind as it got darker around him and he was murdered on the floor of the Roman Senate by the traitorous assistance of a man he considered to be a close personal friend. During World War II, several English-speaking women became known as Tokyo Rose because of their cooperation with the Japanese, their nightly radio dispatches, harassing American soldiers over the airways during the years of the war in the Pacific. There are public betrayals of principles, of friendship, of sworn bonds of loyalty and love. And then there are others that are more subtle and nuanced, which are not found in history books, but they're carried in our hearts, where they pull downward with the weight of 1,000 gravities. Herschel Sheets, a renowned pastor in North Georgia Conference who recently died. I came to know him when I was at Snellville United Methodist. I once heard him give a sermon there, which he held up a picture of himself as a young boy. In the photo, he was maybe 8 or 9 years old, standing in a field, kind of fresh-faced, glowing from an afternoon of playing. His whole future out of front of him. And Herschel commented that he looks at that picture sometimes and he thinks how he has let that boy down. The dreams the boy held, the hopes for his future. Somewhere along the way, Herschel knew he let some of those go, and he betrayed the boy. I ask you just for a moment to reflect within your mind on a picture of yourself from your childhood. Maybe conjure one up you have back there somewhere. What hopes of that child did you dash? What dreams did you leave lying on the floor? What wrecking balls did you heave against those castles in the air? What containers of paint did you hurl over their attempted masterpieces? In each of our lives, covenants have been smashed with ourselves and with the people who trust us. In subtle and not so subtle ways, we have betrayed our own callings. We have sabotaged relationships. We have sought advantage for ourselves over others. We have broken confidences. We have mistreated our bodies. We have run roughshod over the dreams of brothers and sisters. We have exploited, manipulated, betrayed what Jesus has asked us to be about. And we have looked the other way as the cock has crowed 3 times. And here is what is remarkable. Jesus invites you to this meal of remembrance that we have as the Lord's Supper to be fed and to be blessed. You are not disinvited. Your invitation still arrives. Your chair is in position at the table. Your place setting is prepared. You have been included among the guests. Jesus looks for you as you arrive and nods. But you're going to leave early. He's going to look toward your seat and it's going to be empty. He might wonder where you've gone. but you have someone to meet. Silver coins will be exchanged. There's a picture I came across, and I've asked Ryan just to put that up just for a moment for you to have a look at. It captures an interpretation of the setting, but already there are signs that things are not right. Notice the shadows are already growing longer, and there's a dark and shadowy presence in the upper left corner of the picture. It is Judas, or maybe it's the Judas part of yourself. Judas is leaving early to be about his mission. There's no time to wait and continue conversations because betrayal is part of the evening activities. Would you join me in prayer? Gracious Lord, after the gathering, after the shared meal when we dined with you, after the laughter, as the tone grows more serious and the shadows grow longer and the darkness begins to deepen, we become silent. We blurt out our loyalty, we swear our faithfulness, but your soft eyes seek ours, and you look with knowing and disappointment and compassion. For you know that we will fail with our best efforts, that anxiety and fear will transform us into cowards who look the other way and who betray you. With deed and voice, repeatedly we will deny we were ever with you, and surely should not be mistaken for being one of your disciples. Gracious Lord, nevertheless, please accept these words that we lift up to you with longing and with shame. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. a series of scriptures from the Gospels that tell the story that follows from the Passover meal that was shared by Jesus and his disciples. Matthew 26, 20 through 25. When it was evening, he took his place with the 12. And while they were eating, he said, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me." And they became greatly distressed and began to say to him one after another, "Surely not I, Lord." He answered, "The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him, but woe to the one by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that one not to have been born." Judas, who betrayed him, said, "Surely not I, Rabbi." He replied, "You have said so." Matthew 26, verses 31 through 35. Then Jesus said to them, "You will all become deserters because of me this night, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I'm raised up, I will go ahead of you to Galilee." Peter said to him, "Though all become deserters because of you, I will never desert you." Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said to him, "Even though I must die with you, I will not deny you." And so said all the disciples. Mark 14, 32 through 41. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took with him Peter and James and John and began to be distressed and agitated. And he said to them, "I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and keep awake." And going a little farther, he threw himself on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. He said, "Abba, Father, for you all things are possible. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I want, but what you want." He came and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, "Simon, are you asleep? Could you not keep awake 1 hour? Keep awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." And again he went away and prayed, saying the same words. And once more he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy, and they did not know what to say to him. He came a 3rd time and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? Enough! The hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners." Luke chapter 22, verses 54 through 62. Then they seized him and led him away, bringing him into the high priest's house. But Peter was following at a distance. When they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat among them. Then a servant girl, seeing him in the firelight, stared at him and said, "This man also was with him." But he denied it, saying, "Woman, I do not know him." A little later, someone else, on seeing him, said, "You also are one of them." But Peter said, "Man, I am not." Then about an hour later, Still another kept insisting, "Surely this man also was with him, for he is a Galilean." But Peter said, "Man, I do not know what you are talking about." At that moment, while he was still speaking, the cock crowed. The Lord turned and looked at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had said to him, "Before the cock crows today, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly. Mark chapter 15, verses 16 through 20. Then the soldiers led him into the courtyard of the palace, that is, the governor's headquarters. And they called together the whole cohort, and they clothed him in a purple cloak. And they, after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on him. And they began saluting him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They stuck his head with a reed, spat upon him, and knelt down in homage to him. After mocking him, they stripped him of the purple cloak, put his own clothes on him. Then they led him out to crucify him. It is finished.